Hey guys, we're going to take another look at ANA2 by Sonic Academy. I've just created a little loop kind of thing here. I'm going to go through the channels one by one. There's a little bit of processing on here. This isn't a completely dry demo, just because of the nature of what I'm doing here. So ignore this voice channel. This is what my voice is coming into. So don't worry about that. So I'll go through these channels one by one quickly. Little noise one here. We've got just a high pass going on there. Next channel is a kick, which is ANA2. Sorry, not ANA2, it's kick 2. And then a little drum loop. Actually, just so that you know, what I've done here is this drum loop is being augmented by the kick drum, the kick 2 kick drum. So just have a listen as I layer it back on top. It's just beefing things up. And a little percussion loop. Those four together just so that you can hear them. These are just the samples kind of keeping the track going. So nothing fancy. First ANA2 channel we're going to come to is a sequence. Let me just play it. It will help if I unsolo those. So that's a single preset. As I said, I've got some processing on here. I'm going to switch the processing off so you can hear the dry signal as well. I've just got a glue compressor, some EQ, and I've also done a fab filter, a couple of little notches out as well. I've grouped those together so I can switch them all off. Actually, let me just play this. And then I've got LFO tool, just doing a kind of ducking thing as well. So I'm going to take the effects on and off. They're not doing that much. It's just mainly to take out this kind of boxiness that you always get. You don't really want that because I've got a bass patch going on as well. So just have a listen to it on and off. So it's quite boxy now. So it's not drastically altering the preset itself. It's just, tidying up a bit for this little kind of demo. As for the sound I'm using, I've got two oscillators here. They're both saw waves. If you have a look at oscillator 1, it's called a fat, saw fat something 2. And then in the second oscillator, it's just a normal saw wave. Oscillator 1, I've got routed through filter 1. It's going through this filter 1, which is a Roland low pass emulation. And what I've done here, I'm going to solo this oscillator. Just listen to this one by itself. And if you have a look at this G envelope here, this shape is modulating the cutoff of filter 1. So it's like a tempo synced filter cutoff modulation. And then the second oscillator is, it's another saw wave, but this time I've got it stacked voices, 5 voices, which you can see up here. 5 voices detuned quite a bit. And if we solo that one, oscillator 2 is routed through to filter 2, which this time is a Moog style bandpass filter. And if I look at the mod matrix, I've got that going, it's been modulated by LFO1. So this LFO down here, so you can hear. So you can see the LFO modulating this cutoff frequency. So together it makes quite an interesting sound. So let's unsolo that. And the real strength of this plugin is the modulation. It's such a massive improvement over ANA1. So you've got the envelopes, and then there's 4 mod envelopes, the G envelopes, which are like multi-stage envelopes. I'm not going to go into it now. There'll be loads of videos about how you do things later. Then you've got 3 LFOs, And there are modulation sources in the sequencer as well. So you've got a step sequencer with modulation sources there too. But this isn't a review of the synth. This is just a little demo. So that's that sound. The next sound I've got is, what have I got next? A bass, a bass, not a drum. Hang on. This one I've affected and processed a little bit more heavily just because it's a bass patch. So let's just hear it in isolation. We've got LFO tool again doing the same old trick as it always does. It's that fake ducking, and then it's compressed quite heavily for a bass. I've also put some quite heavy EQ on it. I often like to take out this little kind of donkey bit here around 100 hertz. It's not always at 100 hertz, just to get rid of that real boxiness. Giving it a little bit of a boost and taking out the top end, which we don't. It's not really there anyway, but I've just taken it out. So let's listen to it with and without. So this is without the processing. And then switching it on. It kind of really pushes it forward. One other thing as well, I have got the utility, the Ableton Live utility plugin on there just to take the width down a bit. I don't necessarily mind having super wide basses, but in this case there's quite a lot of other stuff going on the left and right channels, so you don't really need it to be that wide. So on and off again. Oh, wrong one. So again, it's not massively altering the tone of the sound, it's just kind of tidying it up and pushing it forward. In fact, let's have a quick look at the patch. It's a very simple patch. What I have got, I'll turn the processing off. It's just a couple of saw waves. You've got two oscillators again. And I've used the standard saw wave, and also there's a saw really soft, so it's kind of softened out saw wave. Both going through I think it's an old ANA filter, but the filters in ANA were quite nice. 2-pole saturated filter. So that's all that's really going on there. Just turn the processing back on. This sound is one of those sounds that sounds, it doesn't sound particularly great in isolation. It's one of those things that works in the mix, or I think it does. It's not a particularly fancy mix, but it's just something to show off what this plugin can do. And then I've got a couple of plucks as well. I've got both these plucks going through a group where I have some, a little bit of EQ doing the same notching, just to take out some of the resonance, because I've got two, excuse me, two plucks layered up. There's quite a lot of resonance that happened. So let me switch this processing off the group processing, and then we'll go through the individual sounds one at a time. And this is the processing on this sound, a bit of EQ and some compression, which I'll switch off. So again, it's not doing too much. This is a fairly simple sound. There's a couple of oscillators. The second oscillator is actually responding to velocity. It's a kind of weird square wave kind of thing. You won't necessarily be hearing it that much in this example because I'm not using velocity. It's just a single velocity for all the notes in the sequence. So you're hearing basically a saw wave, and then there's a noise sample coming through as well. So let's just open up the filter. Everything's going through the same Moog style low pass filter, but just have a listen to how kind of creamy and soft this plugin can sound. It doesn't just do the harsh stuff. Let's have a listen. Processing back on. So here I'm just taking out a little bit of this kind of, again, this is a higher boxy area, giving it a high pass, and then the compression is pulling the effects forward. Just to note, all the delay and reverb you can hear is actually coming from ANA2 itself. There's nothing being added. Let's switch this back on. And then the second pluck is another one from ANA2. This is a more bell-like. Again, you can see I've got the same processing going on. LFO tool. I didn't have the LFO tool on the other pluck. Didn't need it. I've got very similar processing going on each sound. It's just a little bit of EQ and compression, so I'm not drastically altering anything. But in this case, we've got another. It's another 3 oscillator sound. Oscillator 1 is kind of a detuned saw. And then we've got a couple of sampling oscillators. I think this is one of Phil's presets. This is a bell. You can see the bell sample. And the last one is a noise. Just adding a bit of to the top end. All going through an Oberheim filter this time. Let's just have a listen to... Let's just take the processing off and on. You can hear LFO tool really working on this one. So what the EQ is doing, taking out some bottom end, taking out a little bit of the mids where it's getting a little bit harsh, and then compressing it. It's just a tiny bit of compression, but some makeup gain. And I'm not doing anything that you wouldn't do in a track here. I'm not drastically altering the ANA2 sounds. It's just a little bit of tidying up for this mix. And then have a listen to these plucks together because they layer up quite nicely. And then finally, I will lead you out the video with everything playing together. So I'll be doing more videos on ANA2. So speak to you soon. Cheers.